Good morning, everyone. I will be giving a brief presentation on the session's topic of management of EV batteries in India. Setting the context with the rising challenges of global warming and air pollution, the global community has been pushing aggressively to achieve a low carbon economy by adopting clean technologies. And EVs have been at the forefront for decarbonizing the transportation sector. Now, most of the EVs that we see today, they are powered by lithium battery variants, which form a critical component of an EV. And to ensure that these batteries of EV function efficiently and they are handled with environmentally sound practices, we need to manage them throughout their different stages of life. So during their use in automotive applications, batteries play a key role in the performance and safety of an EV. And these two aspects are further highly dependent on three vital parameters of voltage, current, and temperature of the battery. Hence, we need to manage these vital parameters using specially designed systems, which I will discuss later in the slides. Now, when the battery is left with around 70 to 80% of its useful capacity, it's unfit for use in EV applications. So, generally, these spent batteries are dumped in landfill sites. Now, this not only creates hazardous conditions with soil and water contamination, but this also leads to the wastage of critical materials that could have been otherwise used for manufacturing of batteries. So to address these issues, India could work for the development of a sustainable battery ecosystem and using end-of-life recycling and second-life application of batteries to enable and forming a circular economy. Now, in the next few slides, I will discuss some more details about how we can manage batteries. So in India, we see that electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers, they are mainly driving the EV adoption, and majority of EVs in India, they are expected to be powered by lithium-ion batteries. So however, major challenges with these LIVs are maintaining their temperature. So with India experiencing extreme weather conditions, and this poses a critical challenge for the EV performance and safety, especially for electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers, where we have limited options for managing the battery temperature with active cooling or liquid cooling. So here we can see that as the distance, as the distance traveled by the EV before its end of life. So when it's operating out of the safe operating area of around a 15 to 35-degree temperature range, so the performance, its distance travel drastically reduces. And this makes it clear that it's very important to get a hold over the temperature of a battery, as operating in non-optimal temperatures could lead to a deterioration in its performance, and this could also lead to thermal runaway and safety hazards. So managing the battery with some cooling mechanism can help in controlling the temperature of the batteries. And in the extreme right, we can see how cooling mechanisms like air cooling and liquid cooling can drastically reduce the temperature of batteries. So now coming to the management of batteries, we have specially designed electronic devices known as battery management system and thermal management system. The BMS, it functions as the brain of the battery and is responsible for the efficiency, safety, and longevity of the lithium-ion batteries. Its primary role is to ensure that each and every individual cell in the battery operates within the safe operating area by continuously monitoring it in the real time. We also have thermal management system that is dedicated entirely to monitor the temperature of the battery. It prevents battery degradation or the damage that is caused from various thermal thresholds and helps to manage the temperature within the safe operating area. Now, for both these systems to function efficiently, data logging and data analysis forms a critical part of this process, where we need to have accuracy in measuring the voltage, current, and temperature of each individual cell to help the BMS to activate its protective capabilities, making these systems processing hungry devices. Now, we have also seen innovation coming up in this space where some BMS have started using machine learning algorithms to do the number crunching and evaluating the state of health and state of current of the battery. Now, talking about the need for a sustainable battery ecosystem, we all know that India has set a target of 30% vehicle electrification by 2030. And with the rising sale of EVs year on year, So we'll see a rising demand in the number of batteries for EV application, and studies have found out that by 2030, EV batteries could hold a 80% share over the market of LI. Now, the recent studies they've also found out that India would need around 4,000 gigawatt hour of battery, which is humongous. And to cater to this, we also have a challenge that is the scarcity of mineral resources that are used for manufacturing of LIVs. So we see that reserves of these critical materials they are found in the hands of a few nations, and this could lead to a risk of supply chain vulnerability of raw materials, and this could also further lead to an increase in the prices into the rise of these materials with increased demand of batteries across the globe. So as the EV industry ramps up, India needs to address the dual challenges of the scarcity of raw materials as well as the rising demand of batteries, which we have to deal. Also, we have to deal with the sheer amount of the spent batteries that would be accumulated within this decade. So, for this, building a sustainable battery ecosystem by incorporating second life application and end of life recycling strategies becomes an imperative in the long run. So when the battery reaches close to 80% of its initial capacity, we could repurpose it and then use it for low grade applications such as power backups. Now, this would also help in extending the life of the battery and help in reducing the carbon emissions related to batteries. Now, when the battery is degraded to a certain level that it cannot be used further, so we could extract those critical materials from it through direct and indirect processes. This would also help in preventing the pollution that occurs from the leaching of toxic materials from the battery and would also boost the national and economic security of the nation by increasing the supply of these scarce battery materials. So with reuse and recycling, the demand for battery materials can be reduced. However, a major impedance to this establishing of a circular economy has been the lack of regulations and standards that would facilitate the second life application and end of life recycling. Now, talking about a very important factor for managing batteries is to maintain the durability. So the durability of a battery it impacts the longevity, which further determines the overall economic viability of an EV. So when the battery of the EV is degraded, it increases the possible cost of early returns of batteries and also reduces the performance and the range that the vehicle could have been delivered. So here one can see the variations in the degradation levels that were found in the batteries of the Nissan Leaf model, which were launched at different years. So this variation has been majorly attributed to the battery chemistry that has been used in this model. So the NMC battery chemistry of the 2015 model was seen to be more sensitive to degradation at elevated temperatures, and even the packing of the battery cells in the module has lowered the heat dissipation rate and has increased the degradation. So we need to keep these points in mind. And these, like the battery chemistry as well as the packing, should be given high importance. So, as stated earlier, the temperature is a vital parameter that impacts the performance and safety of batteries. So, from this analysis, one can see that the increase in the temperature not only leads to a higher consumption of energy, but it also drastically reduces the driving range that could be provided by an electric vehicle. Now, this has also been evident from incidents where the EVs were not able to deliver the range that were claimed by the OEMs, further raising questions on their reliability, and this also dampens the consumer confidence. So, we need to look at the regulations for testing the performance of LIVs in climatic conditions of India. This analysis highlights the need that EV batteries they should go through testing to determine how they behave under severe extreme conditions. So to protect the battery and the overall system, the battery performance, the parameters of the battery, they must be evaluated by some standards and benchmarks that are set up by the industry. And they should go through a series of safety tests to understand and identify their weak points and their vulnerabilities when they perform under real life off normal conditions. So we also need regulations for maintaining the battery health data and addressing the battery pack design constraints that are currently restricting their use in second life application, as well as the regulations for end of life recycling. India did introduce a draft version of the battery waste management rules in 2020, but this has not been notified yet. So Now is the right time for India to rethink its EV vision and come up with forward-looking strategies that could help in the development of a sustainable battery ecosystem. I would like to end this presentation with a few discussion points that could help us in going forward to create a sustainable battery ecosystem. Thank you all.
Thank you, Anshika. So with that, let's move on to the discussion of the first session discussion. We have with us eminent speakers, Mr. Ruchir Shukla, Director, Electric Mobility at Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation, Dr. Prabjot Kaur, co-founder and CEO, Esmeto Solutions Private Limited, Mr. Anand Deshpande, Senior Deputy Director, ARAI, Mr. Rohan Singh Baes, founder, Ziptrax, and Dr. Rashi Gupta, founder and managing director, Vision Mechatronics Private Limited. And this session will be moderated by Dr. Praveen Kumar, Senior Manager, WRI India. Over to you, Praveen.
Thanks, Aparna. Good morning to everybody. And once again, I welcome all of our experts for this session. And in this session, our focus will be on the topics which requires immediate attention of the researchers, policymakers, industry players, and other relevant stakeholders. And already my colleague Anshika has shared some of the insight in the presentation. So now I will go to our first expert, Dr. Prabjot Kaur, who is closely dealing with the critical challenges of EV batteries related to the performance and safety. So, Dr. Prabjot Kaur, in India, we have more electric two-wheeler and electric three-wheelers, and they are driving the electrification journey in India. And as Anshika has mentioned in the presentation, the temperature is one of the major challenge for the EV batteries in India.
Right.
And currently we have LFP and NMC variants dominating the EV market. So what are the possible solutions, especially for electric two-wheeler and electric three-wheelers? You can think of where it is very difficult to implement these cooling mechanisms. So what kind of innovation or the strategies OEMs and other players can adopt to address this performance and safety issues of EV batteries in Indian operating conditions?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Praveen. I think that this is the most important and the very critical element of designing a battery pack for a two-wheeler and three-wheeler, especially for India. Our challenges are very different, as you have told and Anshika has already covered. So if we talk about our thermal management, especially for two-wheelers and three-wheelers, it actually comes with a huge challenge. One, because the form factor requirement is lesser. So we require a very compact battery pack for a two-wheeler and three-wheeler. We do not want to add the weight. And the third being that because these batteries are for two-wheelers and three-wheelers, and we know that the country is cost sensitive, we really cannot add a lot of technology into these batteries. So these are a few challenges for thermal management in the two-wheeler and three-wheeler batteries. So the best way we can go forward for managing these thermal challenges in the batteries is twofold. One, that we can actually go with passive mechanisms of battery cooling. So the active management, for example, using refrigerants, liquid coolings, etc., won't be actually a good idea to put into a two-wheeler and three-wheeler system because of the cost, etc. And unless we are talking about a very high-performance vehicle, so to say that sports vehicle or a vehicle that comes with different features. So we are talking about general vehicles. We cannot really go with active cooling. We have to manage with passive coolings, where largely it has to do with the materials that you can use for cooling the battery packs. So these could be some phase change materials, thermal pads, and other things, where you can actually use a combination of it to see that the heat generated by the battery pack is exhausted out of the battery as soon as is possible. So that is one of the mechanisms that is used and is kind of efficient for two-wheelers and three-wheeler battery packs, given the other trade-offs that you have to keep in mind. The second thing, of course, is the design itself. So when we are designing the battery pack, the enclosure design, the inside of the battery pack, how we are managing what is the spacing that we are giving, how are we actually packaging the whole cells into the enclosure, the material of the enclosure, the fins or the heat sinks that can be actually very innovatively used to design the packs. I think these are the two ways that we can manage the thermal management for two-wheelers and three-wheelers. So it all starts from the design level itself.
So one very important point you mentioned about that we have the very cost sensitive, price sensitive market in India. Mm-hmm. And if we want to ensure a better performance, durability and safety, we need a sophisticated electronic system sitting on the battery. So what role you see the regulation, minimum regulation standard to ensure the some level of durability and performance and at least one minimum level of quality in the EV batteries?
So a couple of things, Praveen, I think that are important. I think recently ARAI has also upgraded their standard from AIS 048 to 156, where there are certain more parameters added to it to ensure proper cutoffs, thresholds, cell balancing, etc., where they're checking it now. So I think that is a bare minimum thing that we need to have in the lithium-ion battery specifically. So if we look at the earlier regulation, or so as to say the standardization, it was equally applicable for lead acid and lithium-ion batteries. But now it is specifically designed to include the BMS part as well. So if we see the trend that had been there till last year, we would see that even in the lithium-ion batteries, where battery management system is the heart, soul, and the brain of the whole activity in the battery pack, this was missing. So we were only using in the market, we only saw that there were some protection circuits that were put onto the battery packs, which were actually not good, specifically from Indian point of view, where temperature management, cell management is very, very important. And also this performance is important. So I think that is the bare minimum stuff that we need to have. We need to mandate the use of battery management system. We should mandate that the thermal management is effectively managed there, and some reports from the OEMs or the field data we can have that should be kind of mandated, at least from the design level part of it, that we need to have that data to ensure that these things are managed. These things are not, since lithium ion, it's kind of an explosive. It's kind of packaging a bomb inside a small device and then put it to a vehicle. So we need to really take care of it and see that these are very, very well managed. And I think going forward, we would need more stringent standardizations and see that these are actually adhered to by the battery manufacturers.
Thank you, Dr. Prabhjot. Now I'll move to Mr. Ruchesh Shukla, who is the Director, E-Mobility, Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. Ruchesh, for us, in the presentation, we have seen that why we need a sustainable ecosystem for EV batteries in India, and it is important to develop a circular economy strategy for EV batteries in India if we want to address some of the critical challenges which is there with the EV battery. So in your opinion, what are the gaps at the policy and the regulation stage which need immediate attention to develop a robust circular economy strategy in India?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Praveen. And it's a pleasure to be part of this discussion. And question is very relevant. Today, if I try to see that the way we are aspiring for the battery packs, and just to very clearly differentiate between cell and battery pack. So battery packs predominantly looking across, starting with two-wheelers and the larger vehicles, they are going to be really of a few key elements which are going to be really factored critically. from the use perspective, if I first see, is the type of voltages we are aspiring for to really create an optimized architecture of the vehicle, cost of the vehicle, which I think Prabhajot just was speaking about that. And also making the whole effectivity in terms of performance, etc. needed. You got to be going to the substantial high voltages, few hundred volts, especially when we go on the mid side to the delivery vans or commercial vehicles. That's one point, including buses. Even the smaller vehicle, which is we talk about two-wheeler, three-wheeler, the way we are looking at the demand in terms of acceleration, life, range, whatever, is trying to really ask for a higher punch power and the energy factor so that it really delivers both the performances. One is acceleration and second is the range. What I'm trying to say, having said that, this throws us to a world where batteries are not so-called 12-volt standard battery. So today, what we have, most of our systems are to deal with typical conventional flooded lead acid or SMF batteries. They have all for sure guaranteed not more than 12 volt. I'm saying typical voltage when you're really talking handling them. So the factor of how to manage the voltage, DC voltages, which even in the dispensed batteries, when they are expend, use from the primary even and the secondary use, they are out. How do really somebody manages to, the workforce, which is the last leg of our kabadiwalas, to touch and manage them? I think that something is a good gap. While saying that, the overall energy density and specific power what we have in the pack, because first leg is these persons who are going to be collecting from wherever it is, maybe through the repair shop or we know India, so many will try to trade off themselves if they get a better value in cash than parking or sending it back, unless we fix that obligation, which is very important factor, that we somehow create a circularity by traceability beyond certain size of pack. Even it can be a few cells reaching to that limit, or number of more cells but hitting to the similar, like a kilowatt hour or something or more, should have a absolute traceability which is which cannot be tampered, rather tamper-proof, so that people can really look at and create a linkage with the manufacturers from the OEM perspective itself. So purchase the obligation of in terms of passing through a system of what you call as a card or whatever which follows as the battery moves from primary use to secondary to the tertiary use. And therefore the last leg, there is enough money attached as a token with that spent battery for someone who takes a better care in bringing with the right set of semi-skilled people. It is far off from the unfortunately the type of unskilled people today as Kabadiwala do, but create a mechanism which is relatively much higher cost as per the volumes we are seeing that, but at least it's safe. So all this said done is safety is very high factor of consideration which got to be precisely looked at from the lithium pack perspective, both voltage and overall other perspective of specification of product. The second element is energy and power punch in bringing more and more with lesser volume and weight is becoming a constraint where people should be trained enough or educated enough not to attempt in those unorganized sector in terms of tampering it for the benefit of quickly taking larger pack and converting to smaller and possibly passing on as a secondary sales to home inverter and those sorts of places, which is very much highly likely. But we got to bring that mechanism so that these kind of phenomena can be just avoided in terms of policy perspective and regulatory framework perspective. The third, which is very important, is need of material, the components which are required to make the primary cells here in India down the line, as we envisage the ACC in our the PLI scheme in place. How much we encourage and what way we encourage to get to the use of that recovered material back to the mainstream, right? So we bring that circularity with, more importantly in this specific case, various lithium chemistries to recover. We know that cost of recovery at times creates a no business sense, to be honest, in terms of in today's volume and today's type of batteries, etc. But we do require that to happen to make sure that we have relatively less dependence on virgin material, and therefore it also impacts positively to the type of child labor and other stuff which gets into the mining at the source of it. So you're tapping that, and even if they are like artificially prices which are at times making this initiative to go detrimental, we try to balance it by some obligation and offset that cost by virtue of providing enough to the manufacturers of cell or even to the importers. So importers should be brought into the same parameter of reference, that they can't simply bring in the lowest cost and spent life batteries and we don't know, we just read the wrapper and some declaration and that's it. And we put it on a test bed which simply talks about VI characteristic, right? And we just get it what anybody will get it. There's no way otherwise you can figure it out, the true life, what stage we got those cells, which are, are covered again and reprinted with nice. I'm talking about these scenarios which are practically in place, and we have seen in market how things are. So bringing a control in the inflow material which has been directly imported. We know that today there's no one, which is not enough here what we see in this size and scale, no one is manufacturing cells. Then when we are talking about pack, I think Prabhajot covered well, bringing the right size of power electronics and packaging engineering skills. So far, it's a different than box building, right? So what historically people have been doing one way or other is box building. It's not a truly engineered product worked out for the target specification of requirement. Otherwise, we wouldn't have talked about higher temperature, this and this. There are no meaning at all. Why should we talk ever about that temperature? This is the definition. We are talking here what will happen to UAE, right? So we are talking force fitting available stuff from China and other places to India, and when we are foul crying that temperatures are high. No. Pick the right end use, define that as a requirement, bring back the engineering, they'll do it. And for the price, as far as today's amended scheme, it's paying off the 100% cost of battery per kilowatt hour, especially for the two-wheeler segment, if I remember correctly. 15,000, I tell you, is paying 100% of all the cost. So what is stopping today, right? So I think more drive from the business houses, from the manufacturers, people in the game, to really take this advantage and get into. And as far as circularity, bring these aspects of bringing the responsibility and obligations in terms of whether they are importing or give encouragement to the local manufacturers down the line in terms of using the recovered material, which comes after second life use, which is professionally done, so that we really take out money from there rather than crying foul here as a front virgin cost of the pack, which first time gets used in vehicle. Secondary life will give enough money back to the business value stream, and therefore will support. So these are the few thoughts which come, and I'll pause here, jumping again. Thank you. Over to you, Praveen.
Thank you, Ruchirji. You have touched upon the very important points, and you have shared the critical points which need attention if we want to develop a very robust ecosystem for EV batteries in India. And now I'll go to Mr. Anand Deshpande, who is a Senior Deputy Director, ARAI. And Anandji is very closely working with on this testing and standards, regulations. And I'll request Anandji to share some of the insights related to what kind of testing and certification mechanism ARAI is imposing to ensure providing to ensure the better durability, performance and safety from the EV batteries. And the other point I will just add another question here, that is there any regulation and standards for the second life application and end of life recycling of the EV batteries in India? I think please unmute. No, it's no. I think please unmute. Maybe some problem with the audio of Anandji. So let's. So we'll come back to Anandji, but let's move to.
Praveen, you're on mute.
Yeah. So Mr. Rohan, you are involved in the repurposing the EV batteries for the second life application. So I'll request you to share that what are the opportunity and challenges you see in repurposing this EV batteries for the second life application and the end of recycling, end of life recycling.
Basically, see, the battery journey has to start from the time, the analysis or the tracking of the battery parameters has to start from the time when the battery is first brought into the country at the cell level. That data has to percolate down to the manufacturer, the pack manufacturer of those batteries. And following that, you have to look at the life cycle management of the battery during its service life. So whether it is in mobility or it is in energy storage, that data becomes critical. Following that, that data is again critical for companies or entities who are looking at a second use of these batteries, as well as who are looking at end of life recycling for these batteries. So why that data becomes critical till then is because there is a degradation that happens, the electrochemical cell inside the batteries. There is a degradation mechanism that happens inside, and that can be due to multiple parameters and factors, which includes temperature, which includes usage profile, the kind of abuse that batteries go through when we use them in two-wheeler or three-wheeler mobility is pretty evident by the fact that we are getting batteries that were supposed to last for 3 years under warranty in about 1 or 1.5 years for end of life recycling. So we have these set of challenges that I think Mr. Ruchir has very evidently pointed out, and Dr. Prabhjot had put in the key points that need to be addressed before these batteries even enter the service life. So in terms of second life use, we are again having to go through the same parameters that were to be tracked earlier, but because there is a lack of data, usually we are getting battery packs that don't have any kind of data logging or any kind of smart BMS or any kind of communication. From that perspective, we see that we have to again take forward the testing, the grading process, and then the regrouping of these cells to make new battery packs or second life battery packs. And that is a process that takes a lot of energy, money, and time. Subsequently, what we have also been doing is that the redesigned packs that we make, we are trying to incorporate the points that were mentioned earlier, like thermal management systems, intelligent battery management systems, some kind of performance degradation analysis using machine learning and AI algorithms. So those are the aspects that we are having to do in our second life batteries, because obviously the first life batteries were not so good. So automatically we need to definitely monitor the second life ones, right? And post that, there is obviously a buyback that we do at the end of life for these battery packs. Here we are looking at critical materials for the battery supply chain. These include the likes of lithium and cobalt, which were earlier discussed, but increasingly we're seeing batteries coming either with no cobalt or with high nickel content. So these will be the future EV batteries specifically, which will continue to reduce the amount of cobalt, increase the amount of nickel, or entirely remove both of these metals from the mixture and come out with LFP kind of batteries. So definitely there is a need to localize this supply chain, incentivize the collection mechanism, the segregation mechanism for these batteries. There was a mention of the policy earlier by WRA presenter, and I think that has been ongoing. So there have been multiple consultations and discussions. So ZITRAX has been part of that committee under NITI Aayog as well as Ministry of Environment and Forest. And there has been very constructive approach in terms of both recycling as well as the use of batteries. So we will see some kind of a notification coming out maybe this year or next around batteries. We're increasingly importing more and more batteries in India. So last year's figures stand at around $2.1 billion. That should give enough demand for companies to start manufacturing in India. If there's single year is crossing to $2.5 billion of import of lithium-ion batteries. And in terms of the supply chain, how we look at integrating. So obviously battery recycling will form a good chunk of the material that comes for cell manufacturing in India, because the mining operations in India have not discovered any reserves for these metals yet. So there can be a substantial percentage of localization for PLI scheme interested companies who are putting up that 5 gigawatt hour energy production, cell production factory to look at sourcing their raw materials, which would be in thousands of tons for all these metals effectively to be sourced from recycled sources. So I think those are the critical areas and challenges. There's obviously need for regulation as well as investment into these areas.
Thank you, Rohan. Now I'll just once again go back to Anandji. Now he's back with us. So Anandji, my question was about the regulation and standards for battery, the durability of the EV batteries. And the other question was about the regulation and standards for second life application and recycling of used EV batteries.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry for the delay. Thank you, Dr. Parveen Kumar. Related to the safety of the batteries, as Dr. Prabhjot Kaur mentioned in her opening remarks, now the electric vehicles and the batteries, they have got contemporary safety standards in our country. Now the approach is an integrated approach where there is a systems approach between electric vehicle and battery. They are treated as one system, and the safety of the vehicle along with battery is captured in the regulatory standards. So for 2 and 3 wheeler vehicles, we have got AS 156, and for cars and buses, we have got AS 038 revision 2 standard, which is mandatory. So a lot of thrust is there on the thermal management of battery management system, cooling system, to avoid any kind of thermal propagation, thermal events in the vehicle because of any malfunctioning of the battery cells. So all due care has been taken. So this is a part of the regulatory requirement, but because of localization and various requirements of FAME certification and assessment, a lot of vehicle manufacturers also doing battery validation in addition to certification. So when they are localizing the battery packs, they carry out exhaustive localization validation plan to check the quality, performance, durability of the battery as per their internal standards or international standards. So there are some ISO standards which give requirements for performance life cycle testing of lithium-ion batteries. So these standards are generally referred. Even ACC PLI scheme also requires a measurement of energy density and life cycle. This is also being captured and at ARA at our Electric Mobility Center, we are carrying out all these testing and other activities to support local industry in the localization efforts. And as in the initial presentation, coming to the second life of batteries, Ministry of Environment and Forest, they have come out with draft rules, because as all of us know, there are battery recycling rules in place for lead acid batteries. But for lithium ion batteries, the Ministry of Environment and Forest has come out with draft rules. As Ishita mentioned, the final notification is still awaited. But presently, there is no clear-cut guideline or practice for the recycling of lithium-ion batteries, and there is urgent need, as mentioned by other speakers. So, since we are importing a lot of cells and also creating battery packs, so proper system of recycling, secondary store, secondary use, then urban mining, all those requirements have to be captured in the form of proper rules and guidelines and with the proper government notification. That's what we also believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Anandji. Now I'll go to Dr. Rashi Gupta, who is the founder and managing director of Vision Mechatronics Private Limited. And Dr. Rashi, I have a very important question for you when we are talking about a sustainable ecosystem for EV batteries in India, and their second life application and end of life recycling is very crucial. So what kind of business model will help in creating a very robust ecosystem for the second life application of EV batteries in India?
Thank you, Praveenji. Thank you, the organizers and the esteemed panelists and my lovely audience out here. See, the thing is, second life batteries are not easy. Let's understand second life batteries, as Rohan also mentioned, that there's a lot of challenge. When the first life itself was not great, how can you expect second life to be awesome? So, and we all know practically what are the challenges and the ground reality that we are facing. Even Ruchilji said that. So, you know, what is important to have the sustainability in is we need to have a robust BMS first thing. And I think in an innovative financial model, I think battery as a service could work. I'm really not convinced of a second life as yet, because second life from the stationary applications to a stationary application, I don't think will make any sense. But then, yeah, from the EV application to the second life of a stationary application could make sense, subject to the certification of these cells being done for second life application. This is very important. And once we have that, we will have to ensure that we get a lot of data coming from these battery packs, even if it is for a very low grade or, you know, non-critical stationary applications. We need to have data coming in at all levels so that we can ensure the safety of these cells and we do not have any hazards like we just read in the newspapers with the big basket issue on the EVs that happened in Pune. So we need to make sure that, we need to make sure that we are putting safety as paramount for the second life. And when you have battery as a service in a financial model, the liability lies with the provider or the person who is going to operate this, rather than having it with the end user who is going to be frustrated with this. And, the second life would get a very bad name. Which usually happens, in the trend. So we need to evaluate thoroughly. As of now, import of second life or a used battery is banned. It is not allowed, not permitted. So there is a lot of effort being taken at every aspect to allow this. So we are already working behind the scenes to have, standards put in place so that, we can have a robust testing done before allowing anything of this to be used. And most likely, the EVs, EV manufacturers, the OEMs will lobby to put this on a grid scale utility level, because that makes it really cheap, because the second life battery will be available at a very low cost, which is a very attractive thing for India, because anything that is low cost is very attractive to India. We just would pounce to get something, which is low cost without understanding the implications of what we are getting into. So it is very important that we have first standardization. Second, we have a mandatory BMS, which goes with the standards that are laid for the stationary applications. I mean, India is the first country globally to have a BMS standard, which is implemented robust standard, and that should be made mandatory for the second life application, so that we are at least somewhere safe. And third, I think if you have battery as a service, that could really take off the load from the end user, and it would lie to the company in between who's trying to do all of this, and that could actually have a lot of financially, it would give a very good financial impact, because what would happen is the end user pays only for the service that he's using, or for the time that the battery is actually being used, or the number of units or the power that is coming out from the battery, not for the capital investment. So somewhere, this capital investment has to be taken care of. But there is another challenge to this, because these are second life, these are non-robust cells. So the financial community will be hesitant to finance this. So we need to factor in, that cost of finance here and the risk that is associated. Because at this point of time, at least for the next 5 years, I really don't foresee a lot of second life cells coming out. Because EV adoption is still very nascent. Yes, it looks very attractive. We are all trying to work towards EV adoption. But then the second life cells that are actually coming out for the good use of second life is still very less. So we need to really analyze the value for money proposition, number one, and what is the volumes that are available for us to play this game. So I think these are my points on second life. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Rashi. And I have few more questions for our experts, but we are already running late on the session. So I would like to thank all of our esteemed experts. And one very important thing is coming out from this discussion, that we should not always think about the low cost. We need to think that at least minimum some standard and performance is required, at least in the EV batteries, and we all must be ready to pay for that. Otherwise, that will cost in some other way to us. So thank you so much for joining for this session, and I will request all of our experts to stay for the next session. We have very interesting details and information to share with you. So I'll request all of you to stay if possible, and then I will hand over to Aparna for the next session.
Thank you, Praveen, and thank you to all the speakers who joined us for the session. And it was a very insightful discussion on management of EV batteries, and we also, received insights on, what are some of the challenges in the battery ecosystem today in India, and we did touch upon some basics of even the business models for batteries and its second life applications. Thank you all once again, and I would like to invite all the speakers who have joined for our second session today, where we will be focusing on the technology aspects, innovations, the priorities for R&D for electric vehicle batteries in India. So without further ado, I would request my colleague Vivek to provide us a brief background to set the context for the session number 2. So over to you, Vivek.
Their importance makes it necessary for the technology selection to be based on the fulfillment of benchmark requirements related to performance, cost, life, and safety. With the increasing adoption of EVs and other clean technologies, the demand for batteries is expected to increase significantly. Currently, the global EV market depends on different lithium-ion variants for energy storage applications than majority of EVs. However, the current technology gives rise to certain challenges which can be broadly classified into issues related to manufacturing and raw materials, and other issues concerning the cost, performance, safety of batteries for EV applications. Now, moving on to the Indian EV and battery market, the EV market in India is taking shape, and the e-2-wheeler and e-3-wheeler segments are leading the journey for EVs in India. Initially, the EV market in India was dominated by lead-acid batteries, especially in the e-rickshaw segment. But now the focus is shifting towards the lithium-ion battery for the high power performance requirements. Among the different variants of the lithium-ion family, LFP and NMC are used for EV applications in the Indian market. And as per the EV 30 at the rate 30 scenario, which gives a target for 30% EVs by 2030 in India, the e-2-wheeler and e-3-wheeler are expected to account for the major share for the same. Now, keeping in mind the cost aspect, each segment will require a unique solution to overcome the limitations of LIBs in the Indian operating conditions. Talking about the scope for development of the current lithium-ion battery technology, there is a need to look for solutions to reduce cost and improve performance and safety of batteries in order to prioritize EV adoption. Additionally, chemistries must be tuned with raw materials options to cater performance challenges based on their abundance and availability, as well as the nature and toxicity level offered by the raw materials. The diversification of the technology can be a feasible step to overcome supply chain risk and critical material dependence. The alternative options that can be considered at commercial scale include the aluminum air battery, sodium-ion battery, and the ultra battery. Now, in the next few slides, I'll be talking about the scope of innovation, taking performance as a case. In the previous session, as we saw how temperature affects the battery life and performance of lithium-ion batteries, and given the tropical nature of the Indian climatic condition, we experience huge variation in minimum and maximum temperatures. So manufacturers need to explore innovative solutions to address this challenge of battery temperature management. Here I've shown an example from a recent paper published in Nature where authors have compared the performance of thermally modulated LFP blade battery pack with conventional blade batteries and NMC battery pack. In the case of the thermally modulated blade battery pack, it can be observed that there are less variations in the driving range at low and high temperature extremes. Also, the thermally modulated LFP blade batteries show better performance in all the assessment criteria for battery cells. Similarly, there is a need to integrate innovative solutions at cell and pack level to enable fast charging without compromising on the battery life and safety. Now, moving to the cost, to improve the trade-off between cost and performance requirement from EV batteries, it is important to explore innovative solutions to overcome the limitation of commercial lithium-ion batteries in EV applications. For example, under the cell-to-pack strategy, we need to explore how to reduce the cell-to-pack cost ratio as well as improve energy density at the cell and the pack level. Here I've shown details for the cell-to-pack cost ratio. According to the top image, since 2013, there has been a significant decrease in cell-to-pack cost ratio, which has resulted in a significant reduction of the overall battery pack cost. Another research suggests that we need to reduce the cell-to-pack cost ratio from 2.07 to 1.2 by 2030. So innovative solutions to improve cell level and energy density strategies to reduce the gap in cell and pack level energy density, as well as exploring innovation in manufacturing such as cell to pack instead of conventional cell to module to pack approach can help. With an LFP blade battery, the energy density of the pack can increase by 30% and the material cost can decrease by 30%. Now, as I've already discussed, the lithium-ion battery research can be broadly classified into two tracks. One is to improve the cost, performance, and safety of current commercial lithium-ion batteries, and the other is to develop a next-generation lithium-ion batteries as well as solid-state batteries. In the current commercial lithium-ion batteries, non-aqueous solvent-based electrolytes are used, which shows serious safety concerns in abusive conditions, as well as they have environmental footprints to due to their material toxicity. Solid-state lithium-ion batteries is expected to address the safety concerns from lithium-ion batteries. Companies like Volkswagen and Toyota have been working on its commercialization and are planning to launch EVs powered by solid-state batteries. Another most widely discussed alternative to the lithium-ion batteries in India is the aluminum air battery. Recently, Finergy and IUCL have tested the aluminum air batteries and on the Mahindra e-3-wheeler platform. The major motivation behind the aluminum air battery includes low cost, high theoretical energy density, and raw material abundance. As far as energy density is concerned, one can get 8 kilowatt per kg compared to 1 to 1.5 kilowatt per kg from the lithium-ion battery. This will be beneficial for EVs in the freight segment, which require more range and less weight for better payload capacity. for the electric variants, which is currently very less compared to the ICE counterparts. We'll get more insights into the disruptive potential of the aluminum batteries by experts in this panel. Moving on to another potential candidate for the battery technology, we have the sodium-ion battery, which shows benefits in terms of thermal stability as well as the safety over the lithium-ion batteries. The challenges with the technology include their cycle life, and the sodium is considered comparatively heavier, which poses a challenge in terms of the battery pack weight. Currently, Faradian and CATL have been working to commercialize the sodium-ion batteries, and the current lithium-ion battery technology setup, manufacturing setup, can be used to commercialize the sodium-ion battery. I've listed some of the discussion points for this session. Thank you. That's all from my side. Over to you, Aparna.
Thank you, Vivek. So for this panel on battery technologies for electric vehicle application in India, we have our eminent panelists, Dr. N. Kalaiselvi, Director, CSIR, CECRI, Government of India, Dr. T. N. Rao, Director, ARCI, Government of India, Dr. Sajid Mubashir, Scientist G, DST, Government of India, Mr. Vikash Mishra, Founder and CEO, Moving, Mr. Atul Arya, Head Energy System Division, Panasonic. And this session will be moderated by Mr. Pavan Mulupatla, Director, Electric Mobility, WRI India. Over to you, Pavan.
Thank you, Aparna, and warm good afternoon to all the panelists. I think it's going to be a very interesting session. A lot of us are going to learn from all of you. So I'll start directly with Dr. Sajid. We understand that DST has been working intensely in setting up R&D priorities for EV sector in India. And we also heard previously some of the challenges associated with EV batteries in Indian conditions. Given this, what should be the priorities for R&Ds, the research and development for EV batteries in India? Are we talking about only LIBs? Are we really talking about different chemistries that are going to come? And how would you see that the EV journey is going to evolve? So just wanted to get your opening thoughts there before I move to other fellow panelists. Dr. Sajid, you're on mute.
Thank you, Pawan. I expect it to be the last. Usually that's the role for government officers. So, but I'm actually prepared to talk about what you said. You said initial remarks. So there's going to be another round? Because fairly crisply, I have my views. If you want, I can give it now or maybe wait for a second round.
No, why don't you go ahead and give your views now, please. Go ahead.
So I found the write-up was very crisp and very focused what you provided. He talked about something like 3,500 to 4,000 gigawatt hour battery requirement in the country by 2035. And then about scarcity of raw material and issue about next generation battery supply chain. So one of the main thing which you said is raw materials are scarce. So lithium-ion battery, we must try to reduce cobalt. I also heard about these things, but till I actually looked at what's happening, every innovation in the lithium-ion battery has been to reduce cobalt. Whatever Tesla has done, they brought it down to 9-10%. You know, NMC is a reduction of cobalt from the cobalt battery to LFP is a total reduction. So that is already there, and I don't think you can really do much. So Teslas have done their work and all of that, you know. So you can cut corners, you can try to do more, but cobalt reduction has been in the radar for all these companies and they've been at it. LTO, I forgot to mention, LTO, LFP, all these options are there. Now, before I further, now I want to talk about only the next generation batteries. And I'm just taking the list you have given and trying to address it because the list is very good, exactly what we would like to say. And my real point, of course, is a strategy to establish a robust R&D ecosystem. This is what the final thing is. So I will still run through this thing about next generation batteries to be able to say why this R&D program of the nature we need. In fact, I have to report that I failed. Last 5 years, I've been trying to create an R&D program. I have failed in that. So that is the context of how we can mount this program. Why there is no acceptance in the government. There is none, zero money. there is no acceptance in the industry. Again, zero money. Have you heard of anybody doing real R&D out here? So, but it's a requirement for everybody. This FAME mission has created a huge R&D program, requirement for an R&D program, because for what reason we don't know. At some point in 2018, the government decided, officers in the government decided, that it has to be two-wheelers and three-wheelers and buses and not the regular cars. It was inviting trouble for us, and that is why the mission has not started really well, because there are no solutions for that yet, neither in terms of battery. Anything like two-wheeler, three-wheeler and all of that stuff, you know, even a four-wheeler small cannot have a cooling system, so your battery is in a problem. And buses, that type of battery you want is like in tons now. You know, you need 2-3 tons of battery into a bus. So we have invited the problem on us and created a huge requirement for a technology program. And we also find that that level of lithium-ion battery, it's kind of a little bit difficult to organize all that lithium-ion battery. So we need to look at how we need to prepare. All of this is not going to happen in a hurry. Our plan is going for all these 3-year FAME mission. I don't really believe it. Who can sensibly say in 3 years anything can be done? It takes 3 years to put up a plant. So how can you have, how can people make vehicles and sell it? So we are really talking about long term. This is just a pressure tactic to say 3-year, 4-year programs, you know, missions will continue. But we are on set on the path. NITI Aayog is leading it. 6 ministries are there, including my ministry. This is a firm program of the government and it is going to continue till we get there. So next generation batteries. You have listed lithium-ion batteries, next generation. You talked about lithium metal batteries, sodium-ion battery, aluminum battery. You talked about aluminum air, but aluminum ion is also a major candidate. So those, I think, are the important things to pursue. And personally, I wouldn't look at any other stuff. Of course, ultra capacitor, but you have mentioned battery. That's why I didn't kind of really talk about that. So lithium-ion batteries, improvement. Generally, we know what the trend is. You know, we know that silicon anode is one trend, and things like that. There are limited things which you can do with the lithium-ion battery, and it has been demonstrated with silicon anode that the best example is this new, you know, this. I'm wearing this, you know, a smart band. The smart band becomes 30% less in size with this silicon ion, the silicon anode. So that's a kind of potential. That means a lot of things for electric vehicle. It has its challenges, but it has already got commercialized in a watch. So sometime soon we might expect that. Lithium-ion battery changes. You know, I don't know how much of our research community can participate. This has to be industry-led research. You talk about rechargeable lithium metal. It is a different way of saying solid-state battery. So you have thin solid materials instead of the liquid. So a lot of research is required to make it stable, chemically inert, and, you know, at the same time being a good conductor of ions. It's just very, very intense research has to happen. So in general, all research in electric vehicles and battery is not to create an entirely new thing. So that's where our researchers kind of aim in a wrong fashion. We are talking about a vehicle on 4 wheels or something like that. That is fixed. We know how a vehicle actually looks like, what components should work, the motor, everything we know. It's about making it better. It's about getting control of the situation in the country. And there is intense research, but it is not about inventing a flying car or things like that. I think the researchers are not really tuned to this requirement, and hence we are not getting into critical mass. So rechargeable lithium metal battery is actually a platform technology. We're talking about solid state electrolyte and a whole lot of things. Your colleague mentioned about Volkswagen, Toyota, BMW and all that. The advantage you see is great safety in the tropical climate, and energy density can be 50% more. Charging can become 80% more. I mean, about, let's say it becomes in 10 minutes or something like that, what you call about in 1 hour. But it's very challenging. So lithium metal solid state battery is a frontier of research you can think of. We must do that, but I think nobody expects that this is going to happen very soon. So having said those two things, one, that lithium ion improvements should be done by industry. They should spend money. Lithium metal batteries, the researchers should start work, because long-term doesn't mean tomorrow. Long-term means doing today and, you know, keep at it till we get there. So lithium metal solid state is very critical. Now we come to the important thing we need to do collaboratively. Researchers have to get together and industry has to get together. This is really feasible, immediately possible. This is sodium-ion battery and aluminum-ion, or aluminum-air also is possible, but sodium-ion and aluminum-ion, let's say. The advantage is you use the same processes for manufacturing, like you use lithium-ion batteries. It's exactly the same, more or less the same, the process. This is very important because when you say technology, I'm sitting in science and technology department here, we don't comprehend it. People generally don't understand. Technology means you must know how to make that thing, whatever that is. If you don't know how to manufacture it, if you don't have the equipment to manufacture, there is no technology at all, whatever you claim, you know. So this is the huge issue. So I don't know whether we have the ability to invent a new method of manufacturing. So we don't, better to align with what is out there. You can use sodium-ion innovations and aluminum-ion battery innovations in the current assembly lines. So we should look at that. And advantages are, people say sodium-ion is not very energy dense. Now I happen to chair the charging standards program of the country, Indian standards for charging. And the purpose of charging is putting electricity into the battery. So I understand really well what this is about. There is no real need to panic. You don't carry around, like so much of energy. It's possible to charge it. I mean, I don't want to get into too much detail. Sodium-ion battery, aluminum-ion batteries, which can charge faster than lithium-ion battery. It doesn't matter what the energy density is. In fact, aluminum-ion can have several times more energy density. It's a difficult challenge to reach there. The scientists will tell you. Sodium-ion has been commercialized. It's been commercialized in China by this company called CATL. And the Chinese ministry has declared that they will standardize and help in commercialize. They're really onto it. Energy density being low is no big deal. You have to charge more often, faster, which is also okay because, you're not all the time sitting in your car. Sometimes you get out, and park it somewhere. And at that time, it's enough to charge it. So basically, these are the technologies I want to talk about. But more important, my main message is how do we, because I've failed after 5 years of intense effort, this is my only work I've been trying to do to get this electric mobility platform going, and it has not been possible. So I think partly because there is a need for people to come together, it can only be done in a consortium. There has to be diverse talents coming together. And like, for example, you cannot expect a lab researcher to even bend a tube. You need the industrial process for that, right? And researchers in the companies, even if there is a research lab out there, beyond a limit, the management, they're risking themselves if they do too much of tinkering and not producing results. So there is a need for a consortium. And I think the main thing is in India, we don't even recognize that a thing called a consortium exists. It's a very strange. India is the only large country which doesn't have a law or a guideline, which is published by the government saying, this is how you do consortium research. And as a result, nobody is clear. If I enter a partnership with, say, Pawan and other people out here, will I gain or lose? Will I lose what I have? Or am I trying to, will I get more from Atul, say, for example, by joining up with him? There has to be some guidelines for it. So I think I would like to spend my next 1 year trying to create, at least if it is possible earlier, to create a guideline for consortium R&D in the country, published in the Gazette. Forget about running programs and starting, but if we have these guidelines in place, I think people will start collaborating themselves. So that's the main thing I want to talk about. Thank you.
Quite fascinating and interesting to hear about the need for a consortium for R&D. And I think you also picked up an earlier point, which I will use that as my question for Dr. T.N. Rao. You said that we should follow the existing conventional methods of battery manufacturing. And my question to Dr. T.N. Rao is, we understand that the current variants of LFP and NMC are dominant. And what is the role of R&D institute? Should we innovate in battery manufacturing or should we follow the conventional methods? That's one part of the question. And the second part is touching upon this new chemistries or the aluminum air. We heard some OEMs and startups saying that, they're testing this. I just wanted to hear your opinion around that as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Pawan. First, let me start with your LFP NMC question. So as Sajid, my friend, he said, NMC is dominating because of its high energy density and then high charging rate, and that's why Tesla and all uses. But in India, I don't think that makes a big sense for NMC to be used in India, because the reason is one is our roads are not meant for such kind of systems, because NMC is a high voltage system, and then battery abuse is much easier in Indian kinds of roads. That's why even Tesla, without abusing, just it got blown up because of the NMC itself. And of course, for 1 kilowatt hour, 2 kilowatt hour, you don't need battery management system. But if you have a problem of, because our NMC has got oxygen degassing problem also. Whereas cobalt-free materials like LFP, and in Indian conditions, except few luxury cars, most of the guys who travel in Indian cars are not really hundreds of kilometers. In Hyderabad, I am the maximum user who travels 100 kilometers a day. And if I have a LFP battery pack, which is highly safe and then cost effective and then no issues with, because his voltage is just 3.2 unlike 3.7 from the NMC. And then that is, and it's cost effective. You don't need to scout for the cobalt elsewhere. So LFP, even Tesla for Chinese market and Indian market, they are looking for LFP. And Chinese themselves, for all the buses, public transport, they use LFP. And then they also promote, but NMC was hyped because they want to bring LFP in the second ranking, but still LFP is going to dominate. And when you talk about two-wheelers, three-wheelers, which is for the next 5 years automotive pickup, because cars are beyond 5 years, and then for that range and the speed, I think LFP is the one. And within LFP, there are little bit of challenges because its energy density is low. So you have to load enough material. So the technological challenges are the processing part. For example, we have recently transferred technology of lithium iron phosphate. First technology in India to an Indian company, and then 3 more are coming forward, and which is on par with any global standard. And then we scaled up and we tried it at the industry level. The material is ready, and 35% of the cost of the battery is coming from the material. And if you don't, and no one talks about the material, is only people talk about getting the batteries and assembling or making BMS and all. So this is very, very important part. So LFP is next 5 to 10 years, you have to focus on LFP for you to go forward to realize our dreams of National Electric Mobility Mission. I'm not talking about NMC should, but NMC use in a real best car with all the BMS and safety standards, and then let people who can buy, let them afford, but don't forget LFP. And the new technological inventions, we need to go, although we cannot stop next 5 to 10 years, these lithium-ion batteries, we need to start thinking about the alternative chemistries. And one of them already CATL has come up with the batteries of sodium-ion batteries, which are, although the energy density is a little bit poor compared to lithium-ion batteries, but they are able to achieve with proper, you need to work on the battery chemistry and the materials suitable for the sodium-ion. Sodium is bigger and heavier, and then you cannot use same materials what you use for lithium-ion. I cannot use lithium-ion phosphate for sodium also, sodium-ion phosphate. It doesn't work. So you need to have a different kind of materials, and people are working, and even we are also working on some of the materials which are suitable for, and for graphite is an anode for lithium-ion, but graphite doesn't work for sodium-ion. You need to have hard carbon, right? So these materials have to be developed, which are already known, and Faradion, one company in India, they're already developing, but there is a lot more has to be done, because if you don't want to work on that, and down the line after 10 years, sodium-ion batteries keep dominating, and we'll be still at the research level, and what we are doing with lithium-ion, and we'll be doing after 10 years. So it is a time we should start with sodium-ion implementation as well as not just looking at NMC LFP. NMC LFP, you do it, whatever is available, but start working on sodium-ion at the commercial level and industry level. And the last point is aluminum air batteries. Aluminum air batteries, they're all, to me, it is a primary battery because it has a range, because how much aluminum you are using, and that depends on the range. And then it is, but you need to replace with new aluminum plates again if you want to recharge. So I see a lot of scope, but I don't see that it can compete with the rechargeable batteries of lithium-ion or sodium ion for some time, unless there are new inventions comes. And what is missing in this discussion for the last few speakers is ultra capacitor. And ultra capacitor is what one should not forget, because when it comes to sodium ion battery or any battery which has to be protected from the safety point of view, when you are on the smooth road, then you can go on to the battery. But when you are taking the ramping or speed breakers, any kind of that kind of systems, you are abusing by drawing so much current. So at that point of time, high power density ultra capacitors can help. One, they help for the regenerative braking. Whenever you have a braking, you can charge it very fast. And second, it can also protect it. The moment you have the high power requirement, then it immediately switch over to. So hybrid systems are being worked, and then we should also look at this point of time, ultra capacitor, it is no lithium, nothing. It's just a carbon electrodes on both sides, activate current. We have done petroleum-based, coke-based ultra capacitor on par with Maxwell, and then we have the technology ready. The first time we have shown that above 1,000 farad capacitance devices are made in India with our technology, which is close to Maxwell. So, well, all the lab, like Sajid said, the industry and research lab or industry or academia connect is necessary for the new technology at this point of time. Usually in India industries, they wait until the cake is ready. Then you are too late. You start working with us, starting from what I make the cake mix, and then start working with us to make the cake, then we'll do. It's a win-win kind of situation. I think I am done. Thank you.
I'll come back to you. You have made certain interesting points. Dr. Kalai Selvi, my question is to you. We heard about both Sajid Ji and Dr. Rao talk about the potential of sodium ion batteries, and then it's also been kind of commercialized already. The question is, what potential does it have for EV applications in India? And also, the second part of the question would be that what kind of strategies can help in addressing the challenges with current commercial LIBs, including the issues of energy density, range, temperature tolerance, etc. So one is on the future and one is on the present. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Pawan. I think you rightly set the context by asking me to elaborate on the present as well as future. At present, if we just talk about, definitely I would vote for only lithium technology, and rightly told by Dr. Sajid and Dr. Tata. So right now, lithium is only leading, and of course, NMC and LFP chemistries are dominating. And I would say, because I just want to say one word with respect to Tata's comment on NMC. See, we know that electricity means we are going to get electrical shock. But then we know how to manage electricity without even get the shock. In a similar way, NMC, we have some thermal stability issue, thermal runaway issue is there. So the problem is there, but of course nowadays we know how to address all these issues. That is number one. Even thermal stability could be very well managed in the material chemistry itself in NMC and partially, and the remaining part could be addressed by BMS and TMS and other things. So that is one way of making NMC suitable for EV application, because of by appreciating its energy density. And of course, LFP, yeah, it's a all-time celebrating candidate. So it is finding its suitability for EV as well as for even strategic application also. I would say that LFP is a rugged system, no doubt about it. But if at all some car manufacturer or some car design is made in such a way that the space is not that enough, then in such case, NMC will come into picture. So NMC will help in a major way. So at that time, we have to take some kind of a precaution how to manage the thermal runaway. That is a present situation. So this is about the present one. And Pawan asked me to just compare this lithium as well as sodium technology. So as on date, if you ask me, sodium ion. Okay, fine.
And also, if Dr. Rao, if you can mute yourself. Yeah, thank you.
So in the case of now sodium ion battery, you just asked my opinion, right? As on date, I cannot recommend the sodium ion battery for EV directly, because a lot more has to be done.
Right now, for consumer electronics and for some lower applications, you can really consider sodium-ion batteries. But the days are not so far off. Sodium-ion batteries will also qualify themselves for their application in EV battery. I will just tell you a very simple formula. You can very easily match the performance of a sodium-ion battery with a lithium-ion battery with LFP as the cathode material. Why? Because here also you are getting 3.2 volts in LFP. Same 3.2 volts could be produced in sodium-ion battery. Similarly, the capacity, I'm just talking in terms of 18650 cylindrical cells, because from CSIR Sikri, we are working on 18650 cylindrical cells in a major way. So in the same cylindrical cell, you can get 1 ampere hour so easily, 1.2 Ah so easily with LFP. Same thing, more or less 1 to 1.1 could be achievable with sodium-ion battery. Therefore, with respect to energy density and power density and all, it could be very easily matched with a lithium-ion battery wherein LFP chemistry is really practiced. So that way, that is the scope and the hope. And I can say that sodium-ion battery will definitely match with the requirements of the EV market in the coming days. Now, as far as Sikri is concerned, I'm so happy to inform all of you that we have minimum of 3 patents with respect to sodium-ion battery. We have 1 patent on sodium-ion battery cathode, 1 on sodium-ion battery anode, the other one is on the electrolyte part. Apart from that, we have the recipe and we have the know-how also for the bulk synthesis of the sodium battery active material. So this is our thing with respect to the present. And you asked about the future. I think I should really thank Dr. Sajid and Dr. Tata, because they already just left a very good space for supercapacitor. Sajid also mentioned about supercapacitor and Tata also mentioned about supercapacitor, because as he rightly told us, Tata mentioned, a combination of battery and supercapacitor, which we call it as a hybrid system. This hybrid system will definitely help us in a major way to manage with the requirement of power as well as energy. So the energy will be given by the battery and the power will be given by the supercapacitor. And we from Sikri, we are now doing the demonstration in campus, wherein we are running an auto rickshaw with a hybrid formula, wherein we just made one hybrid with the supercapacitor and lead acid. The other hybrid is supercapacitor and lithium also. So the initial results as well as the data, we are really excited, because just very recently we started this kind of an attempt, and this is very encouraging. And after we ourselves get convinced with the kind of data filed up, I think we will be able to just make it as a big show also. That's what we are planning. So supercapacitor is another thing. And you asked me one more thing, that will be my last point. What are the different ways by means of which you can match, you can make SIB to match with LIB? As I already told, now with the materials manipulation itself, by choosing the right cathode with the right anode, definitely sodium-ion battery could now itself be very easily matched with the performance of LFP chemistry, both in terms of energy density as well as power density. Of course, we need not worry about the thermal runaway and other things, and its charging speed as well as its cycling ability. All those meritorious points have already been mentioned by Dr. Sajid, and therefore sodium-ion batteries are definitely going to rule in the coming days. And today it is only lithium battery which is getting the dominance in EV market also. So these are my initial comments. So in Sikri, we have technology on lithium battery, sodium battery, and supercapacitor. In lithium also, we have a value-added LFP technology. We have NMC technology. We transferred our NMC technology to Tata Chemicals just 1.5 months back. NMC-based cell-making technology. So we have our own indigenous homegrown technologies with respect to lithium, sodium-based electrodes, as well as supercapacitors also. Thanks a lot, Pawan.
Thank you. Very interesting to hear the 3 things on sodium ion, then supercapacitors, and of course the LIBs. Moving on, and I'll just come back. It's quite curious. I have some questions related to the sodium ion batteries itself. I'll get back to you. But Atul, let me bring you here. One part of the question is that we heard so much about LFP so far. The first question I have is to you is, our NMC is going to be dominant for future automotive applications? Globally, we see it's happening. Will that be in India as well? Or will we continue with LFP in the LIB segment for the next decade or so? And the second part is in India, we understand that the sales are dominated in electric by two-wheelers and three-wheelers, where it is difficult to include liquid cooling or other efficient cooling mechanisms for better thermal management. So what kind of solutions can help in addressing these challenges, and which could significantly help in improving the performance, cost, and safety of the battery? And I also wanted you to touch upon how far are we in terms of the timeline of solid state LIBs in the Indian EV industry or in the battery industry itself.
So great. Thank you, Pawan, for inviting me for this discussion. And I'll tell you the reason why I accept such invites is that there are three reasons. One, that I can boast that I know all these accomplished scientists and I was on the same panel. And obviously, I also believe that you won't ask me too many technical questions because you already have scientists. But this one is like you foxed me there. And obviously, the other important thing is that I get to learn a lot through listening these people. So I'm super impressed by what has been shared so far by Dr. Sajid or Dr. Rao and Madam also. So you asked me a question about, so this debate is not new, LFP versus NMC, and especially, knowing that as a company, we don't manufacture LFP, and in India, LFP is one of the most significant, I would not say the complete, but most significant player as a chemistry for reasons of price, cost, availability, and many other aspects. And obviously, there is also a debate about safety of NMC versus LFP, which I think two scientists already exchanged their views. But my simple answer to these things is that, look, both chemistries have their own advantages and disadvantages, whether it is about usage of a cobalt or material in general, whether it is about energy density, whether it is about inherent or, the way we qualify safety. Obviously, if any chemistry which is more energy dense is likely to have, more issues or challenges with respect to safety. But as an engineer or as typical engineers, our job is to really tackle those challenges and solve those issues. Like Madam said, we know electricity is dangerous, right? But we have evolved in terms of how we handle electricity. And same goes with any other kind of fuel which we use, whether it is petrol, diesel, CNG, LPG, etc., etc. So we always have to design system in such a way that we don't really get into the wrong direction as far as safety is concerned. And I think safety one of the most important criteria, should be most important criteria for the battery system apart from the cell. And that's where I think I also would like to probably briefly say that even if the debate is won by one type of chemistry saying that my cell is more safe than your cell, it's extremely important to focus on how the battery packs and modules are designed and implemented. So even if you use a very, very safe cell and misuse the way you pack them in a battery system and with the electric vehicle, you could be in a dangerous situation versus taking a relatively lower safe cell, but building a robust system around it and making it more safe. So I think going forwards, I am no fortune teller or future teller, but my feeling is both chemistries, both type of cells will coexist depending on how the end customer or or a typical application wants to weigh which is the most important priority. For some, price or cost will remain priority, and they will probably not look at and which is typical. I think which is typical that if we decide that this is my priority, then we tend to overlook other aspects. Whereas in a lot of mobility segments, I believe energy density is going to remain a very, very strong concern. already one of the key concern, we need to also see from the user's point of view. One of the key concern from the user point of view is that range. So we may agree to Dr. Rao at this point of time, saying that most people do not drive 100 kilometers. But the fact remains, even with the petrol and diesel cars, my car has almost 40 liters of fuel capacity, 45 liters of fuel capacity. And I don't use it up in one shot, only except I travel on a highway for a very long distance. But most of us like to fill it all the time, even if we are going to our office, which is like 20 kilometers away, or we are going to a market. So I think the energy density will be always, in my opinion, in electric mobility will remain very, very important. And the fact that the future research is focusing more and more on only two aspects, in my understanding. One is safety, or higher safety than what we have already achieved. And second, higher energy density. And I think this is something which will, be a priority for mobility sector. But yes, some of the users will choose lesser energy density or lesser range to adjust because of the cost pressure. So that's one part of the question which you asked me. And the second question which you asked me, Pawan, was about the timelines on solid state. So I guess many people talked about sodium ion and stuff like that, and I believe aluminum, sodium ion, all of them will be reality. But what Dr. Sajid said in the beginning was that, and which I completely agree, by the way, that every company has been improving incrementally what chemistries or what products they have. And that's the right way to go. It's extremely difficult to make a completely new cell and, or a new battery, and then have everything around it completely new, which means that you find a new electrode, new cathode, new electrolyte, separators and stuff like that, and also build the manufacturing process. That's like a Herculean task, right? So I think incremental progress is what is there. And from considering that, from the current NMC or current lithium ion, solid state is also in some sense an incremental change. You are only changing the electrolyte to a large extent and not touching various other aspects. And I think that's why I believe that solid state is one of the front runners as far as progress or progression on current crop of lithium ion batteries is concerned. Of course, efforts on reducing cobalt and other material or replacing them with aluminum or some other material will parallelly go hand in hand. And considering that this is an incremental change which is likely to happen, it still is a long way. When I say long way, in my opinion, it's nothing less than 5 to 7 years or perhaps 8 years to first come on the horizon and be available for the market. And the other aspect one needs to also be very, very conscious about is that since this will be a new research, a lot of efforts would go in and new materials will come in. Initially, the cost is going to be high. So the uptake of solid state, even though we may be very eagerly waiting for this, that solid state battery will come and solve a lot of problems. The uptake of this kind of battery will be slow because in next 5 to 7 years or 8 years, the current batteries would have, the prices would have gone down further, whereas solid state will start at a much higher level. And so in terms of, if you ask me in terms of mass adoption, perhaps it's like maybe more than 10 or 12 years or 15 years away from today. So I guess this is where we are in terms of evolution.
Thank you, Atul. I think that's quite helpful to see your perspective on NMCs and also understand where we are heading with the solid state batteries. Now, moving on, Vikas, you have been running all these fleets and you've heard from various panelists on the diversification of the batteries itself. So two questions for you. One is, what kind of an improvement would you suggest in the battery technology or manufacturers currently based on your own experience of running the EV fleet? And then second, how useful do you see this diversification of the battery technology itself? We are talking about multiple technologies here, and maybe we are talking about a 3-year time frame, a 5-year or a 10-year. So we have different technologies of battery in different years. I just wanted to get your first-hand experience and thoughts around this.
Thanks a lot, Pawan. Thanks a lot for the opportunity. I've been patiently listening to all the experts and very insightful and very knowledgeable insights I got. So that's why I want to add a spin to the conversation by talking more about what we are realizing on the ground. So as of today, Pawan, we are doing about 300 plus electric vehicle fleet for the B2B applications in the goods transport across 10 cities in India. And your first question, Pawan, in terms of what do we really want from the industry? Clearly, the first choice, if I have to make, or first request that I have to make to the industry is the range. And typically, although for a B2C is a different application, for B2B, in the two-wheeler space, we need about 100 kilometer plus range. In three-wheeler, we need about 125 kilometer plus range. And in four-wheeler, we need about 150 kilometer plus range. Now, for that to happen, the whole energy density becomes an important factor because you cannot increase the battery load so much so that your payload of the vehicle decreases and you are not able to ship more shipments. So the energy density that's being used, whether it's a lithium ion, whether within the lithium ion, whether it's an NMC or LFP, it's important that the per shipment cost or per kg cost is reduced by having a proper energy density. That's number one. Number two, from a battery life perspective, see, for us, Pawan, it's very important that a business has to be profitable, scalable, and sustainable. And to have profitable, it has to have a certain life expectation of a battery. So for two-wheeler, we expect it should run for at least 3 years. For three-wheeler, we expect to run at least for 5 years. And for four-wheeler, we expect it to run for at least 8 years for it to become a profitable, scalable, and sustainable business model for us. So any battery life linking with the charging cycle and discharging cycle, that is very important that OEM and the R&D at the design level itself figure out how can we have the first application of the battery itself at those years so that it becomes a profitable for a driver to run the EV vehicle as compared to the ICE vehicle. And third thing, the biggest anxiety that driver has, fleet owner has, is about the fast charging capability. Because since it's straight for tool, the vehicle that is being used for applications in the B2B goods, fast charging capability is important in the Indian context, where you can expect at least 50% charge being done in 15 to 30 minutes time, and the downtime is not there for drivers compared to the ICE vehicles. So the fast charging capability also has to be invested in. So those was my few comments, Pawan, on the first question. On the second question, in terms of diversification of battery technologies, I think it's good that we are talking about various R&D happening in the space. But for me, there are two things is very important. One is the cost curve. The cost curve that we have seen, the declining trend from 2010 to 2020, we should not change the cost curve. If it goes against the cost curve reduction, then probably we will, all the early wins that we are seeing in the EV race, we will lose the early win. And second, in terms of security of supply side, what we are seeing, Pawan, is in reality, to plan for your delivery in November, we have to plan even now. So basically, there's a 3 months of lead time when you want a vehicle to be deployed for your fleet versus when you actually get the vehicle from the OEM. And large part of this is because dependence upon the raw material supply and getting the cell available for the Indian market. So any R&D has to have a component which has to be easily available, easily importable, and easily used for producing the vehicle. So the people like us do not suffer delay in terms of non-availability of the raw materials and ensuring the security of supply. So that's also a few comments, Pawan, from my perspective, how we are doing at Moving.
Quite interesting what you touched upon on the cost curve. I think from the market perspective, even Ruchir in his comment mentioned that, need for a robust final product taking into consideration the actual what the market needs and what's the expected performance. And I think that's what you also have touched upon. And I think we all kind of understand this. But let me bring back, and this question is, we have completed two set of questions with all the panelists. So this is more of an open discussion. We have another 10 minutes that I thought I'll discuss with all of you. Is, do we see diversification as the future for India, taking into consideration the geopolitics, the environmental concerns, the final product? Because we are not talking only about one thing, but we're talking about multiple aspects here. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts. And this question is open to any of the panelists. And the second part is also that in terms of the cost curve, do we see either the sodium ion or the ultra capacitor that was being talked about being on par in the cost curve, that concern that Vikas also has raised? Dr. Sajid or Dr. Rao, anyone, Atul?
Yeah, I think, maybe I should put a context because there will be very good views coming in. First of all, electric vehicle in India does not mean a car. It doesn't really mean a car. If you take the numbers of vehicles out there, it will be two-wheelers, three-wheelers. Four-wheelers doesn't always mean a car. Just now, Vikas was talking about it. And there could be buses. This is what the real plan is, and this is what people are using. So the electric mobility mission of India, the FAME and everything else together, the transformative mobility mission, it's about shifting people from IC engine vehicle to electric. It is not about changing what they buy. When you buy a two-wheeler today, you expected to buy a two-wheeler tomorrow, unless you kind of move on to another thing. So that being the issue, I think we need to understand it is not very difficult. If we are fortunate that India can electrify much more easily. We don't drive too far. We are not all into cars, and many of us are into buses, and we have to use taxis quite a bit. Now let's look at range anxiety and fast charging and supply chain. Range anxiety for a taxi driver, he has a range anxiety. He has to drop the passenger off. After that, he has no range anxiety. He can charge wherever he's reaching. So there is one big issue with range anxiety, that it is not always the maximum you fill in. The new batteries which are coming in, all of them, whether it's sodium ion or aluminum ion, they all promise much faster charging. So we have to really kind of understand what is charging, and it is really not like filling petrol. You have to go to some particular place where the pump has got oil filled in there, and only there you can get it. This you can charge just about anywhere. If you have a two-wheeler or a three-wheeler, a single-phase connection is enough for even fast charging. Any rate of fast charging you're talking about, that's enough. Because the battery capacity will be 7 kilowatt, and 7 kilowatt of power is available from a single-phase line. You can just put it in, it should be, so if it's a 10-minute fast charging battery, you can fast charge in 10 minutes from just anywhere in the country, right? So how much range you want to carry around? If your concern is to carry a small battery, you have to think about how long a man is going to drive. Is he going to sit on his vehicle and keep driving his scooter for 200 kilometers or even 100 kilometers? You put a cap and say, this is what it is. You have to be a little bit concerned about the human being as well. So let's say 50 kilometers you expect him to drive, and he should have a point where he can charge it on the roadside. That is the other part of it, the regulatory part of it, the access to power, and devices are not the issue. These are the main issues, the access to power, the design of the vehicle. So with that, I think it is quite easy to shift entirely to electric the whole two-wheeler, three-wheeler population in the country, including goods, because they cannot travel too far. Their range is limited by design. So this is one, and I think the new batteries will help. So this is the thing about fast charging I wanted to mention. Second thing is, any research we're talking about here is a research for the supply chain. Because what can you research in an electric vehicle except the motor, battery, and the power electronics? And that's what you do, You're not inventing anything new. So this is directly going to the supply chain. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Dr. Rao, you're on mute.
Now, okay, can I just, so quick points. You are talking about the supply chain issues, and which are going to aggravate as the demand and the number of vehicles keep going up and up in this country. And unless the implementation of electric mobility in India is possible only when the lithium-ion battery, now let us talk about lithium-ion battery. Battery manufacturing happens only in this country. Otherwise, you keep depending on the cells, and then you don't know what kind of cells come from China or elsewhere, and then you have to assemble them. So unless the lithium-ion battery manufacturing happens in India, you cannot really realize the dream what you are looking for. And second thing is, when you are doing so, then it is a supply of the materials. And that's where again my starting point comes, lithium iron phosphate. And lithium iron phosphate, you only have to depend on lithium carbonate. The moment you start making the material of lithium, nickel, manganese oxide, you have to depend on imports of 3 elements, and cobalt is absorbed too high a cost and difficult to import. For the magnets itself, people are struggling to import cobalt when they want to make magnets for electric vehicles or other motor. So that is one thing. And second thing, you are also asking about the cost of the ultra capacitors. Ultra capacitor manufacturing cost is very high. It's not manufacturing cost, it is a buying cost. When you import Maxwell, it's too high a cost, so people cannot think of it. But if you see the technology of ultra capacitor making or the lithium battery making, there's no big difference. And the so-called Elon Musk's tabless design of 4060, I think, that is exactly the supercap technology only. And we made supercap of more than 1000 farad with tabless technology first time in India. And then same thing now we're extending to even bigger batteries for LFP, LTO, and then NMC, and also that we have a bigger size batteries coming. So we have to see where exactly the optimum, that's what we're looking for. So once you adopt the technology within the country for the high capacity supercaps, it is going to cost much less than even battery, because you are depending on only on the carbon, what you have to produce. There is no lithium in both electrodes. That is the second point. The last point very quickly I want to make is, what is missing in this debate is that Suzuki and Toyota and Toshiba, their thought process, school of thought is that for next 5 years or so, it is the hybrid cars which are going to dominate. Why? Because the electrical charging infrastructure in India is going to take a long time. Although, of course, another school, we are going to talk about swapping system and all, and myself, Sajid, we are really breaking our brains in the committees. So now, if you do so, what they're looking for is the fast charging. When you want to do the hybrid vehicle where your combustion is running and then your battery is getting charged, you need an ultra fast charging of the battery there. There, it is not a range or the energy density is not so, but it's the charging that's very important. So LTO batteries, it may be LTO with NMC or LTO with LFP. LTO with NMC will do because the voltage will still, you can get 2.8 to 3 volts. If it's LTO and LFP, it's only 2 volts. So they are looking for LTO batteries, and then the Gujarat plant is going to make only LTO batteries for their hybrid vehicles, because that is much easier to go. And then even I want to buy a vehicle, I am trying to looking for changing my XUV 500 to some other car. I'm only opting for a hybrid car because I'm not sure where I will charge my car. Neither my community doesn't have a charging station, nor my office and all. So at least the transition time, I want to have a SUV with a hybrid one, and I'm looking for a Suzuki. So LTO batteries should not be missed, and ultra capacitor cost is not an issue. And supply chain problem when comes, you have to think what you are going to import. NMC as such, no one will supply to you because there is a big demand. Not LFP. The cathode material itself, people are struggling. Hyderabad Batteries Limited, they started 40 megawatt hour plant, and they want to import LFP, and it's not so easy to import LFP on tons. You need tons. For one car of a sedan, you need 35 kgs of LFP, and imagine what kind of LFP you need. So when you think of the battery making in India, you have to think the supply chain and what raw materials I'm getting. Then you can think of safety. You can always have the electronics, and then safety you can improve. But the basic issue is that, which I am actually touching on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Atul, any thoughts? Dr. Kalai Selvi? Any comments?
Yeah, regarding this battery manufacturing within this country, I think I can make a mention.
Turn on your video, ma'am. Yeah.
Yeah. 1 minute. Yeah, the last point of Dr. Tata's point, that is, he says that in India itself, lithium battery manufacturing should be really activated. So maybe including Pawan, many of you may be knowing that from CSIR, with CSIR funding, we are coming up with a megawatt lithium battery production facility in our Chennai unit. And soon we'll be coming up with the fabrication of 18650 cylindrical cells, 1000 cells per day. Because now the assembly line is getting established right now. So that is going to be the dedicated 18650 cylindrical cell making assembly line. So the team has to come from China to do the installation. Then we'll go for the test trial run. Then we will go for the actual production. This is phase 1. Then in phase 2, we are coming up with a very big facility, wherein we'll be going ahead with again cylindrical and possibly prismatic cells also. So this is based on our own indigenous technology only. So lithium battery production facility with a homegrown technology is going to be practiced in the near future. So I think that way we'll be able to really add value to the Atmanirbhar Bharat effort, or whatever you can say, even PLA scheme. So all the ongoing schemes will definitely get value addition with this kind of facilities which are coming up. This is what I just wanted to share. Thanks.
Thank you. I think we are close to the end of the session. Any thought?
Can I just request, if we cannot do any R&D if the consortium method is not addressed, there is no way one can do this, you know, and all this will remain as a talk. I think there is an opportunity today to go ahead and formulate this. Niti Aayog is willing, they're not too dominating. But if somebody can draft all these guidelines and go there, I think this might happen. And what I find is, I've done consortium projects, about 10 of them, some years ago. I find that there is well-developed systems across the world, but they're tied to their cultures. Japanese do in a particular way, US is a very corporatized kind of way, Europe is a little bit in between. So we have to find our method. We need to devise our own thing. And surprisingly, even China has several laws on how you can do consortium R&D. It's pathetic that we don't even, our National Science and Technology Plan, it is not there. None of the labs understand what a consortium thing is. I can tell you directly before that. Consortium for a CSIR labs setup, the NMITLI program, is a consortium of CSIR labs, nothing more. I don't think that is what we're talking about. We're talking about industry coming in, and the other part of the thing is like, we need to provide a safe place where people can put their money in together. That means a formal kind of a consortium thing. I hope there will be interest. Otherwise, we can have these seminars. It cannot be put into action.
Pawan,
yeah, Atul, please go ahead.
Maybe just picking on from what Sajid just said, you know, I completely agree that as an industry, as Indian community, there should be a consortium, because it's really not possible perhaps for one single company to drive this. And we have enough scientific talent and capital, but someone needs to really collaborate at that level and you know, bring out a consortium which is the most successful and way, because there are a lot of complementary strengths available in many companies together. And another important thing which, you know, you've been talking and some other people also talking about, manufacturing in India. You know, I think just a slight different opinion on that, in the sense that I'm not against manufacturing in India, and I wish we start manufacturing in India in loads, but we need to realize that market is global today. You know, it's not a protected market today. If we need to consume anything in India, we will import, right? Whether it is cell phones or 4G or 5G gear or whatever. At the same time, if we have anything which is here, then we will also export, if as long as we are competitive. So my point would be that even today, even if the current argument is that to manufacture a cell in India, we don't have scale in India, which is perfectly right argument as far as if a company is asked to manufacture complete cell in India, right? But at the same time, what about picking up certain components, you know, just focusing on cathode, just focusing on electrolyte, just focusing on anything else? You know, it's an assembly of components which essentially happens when the cell gets manufactured. Now, if we were to see, and that would be far more easier in terms of conducting a consortium-based research, and building a product which is matching the world-class standards, and it could be used by Europe, it could be used by Japan, it could be used by Korea, US, and who else not. And then I think that's the way we can make a progression from manufacturing nothing to manufacturing a cell in India, perhaps in 1 decade. I don't know. That will depend on the speed which the industry takes. So that's my view on this.
Thank you, Atul. Any final comments, Dr. Rao? Because otherwise we can wrap up this session.
Yeah. So just one last point, which doesn't have relevance to this, but why the cost of the battery in India is not matching or matchable to any other one, Chinese and all, because even today, I said 40% of the cost of the battery is the materials. It's not just cathode, anode, and alkaline. Even the current collectors like aluminum foil, copper foil, everything we import. And even we make those components and then fulfill the 40% indigenized, you still have another 40%, even 50% is the equipment manufactured. So I just give very quick example. When we are making supercapacitor, we forgot one machine, that is the jelly roll you have to flatten from the both sides. That is 60 lakhs rupees, which we forgot because for normal battery people, they do the tab welding. Then we took the design from the YouTube and all this one, and I called some manufacturer who makes the equipment, and I just wanted to do that. We did it, and today we are able to do, and just in 3 lakhs we could do that. So the cost of battery, why we are not able to match is, some industry should think to make the battery line. It is not so big rocket science to battery line to make the battery itself. If that is not done, and if you are only depending on the components, you can never make batteries of cost effective within the country. So manufacturing of the battery making equipment also is one of the key factors if you are thinking to match with the cost. That's all. That is my last point. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr.
Regarding the battery manufacturing assembly line equipment, making it as an indigenous thing, no, CMTI could be really considered, because Dr. Nagahanmaya and his team, they have vast experience in mimicking any kind of equipment.
They are willing. They're willing.
Assembly line.
Madam, they are willing. I've had a conversation with them, but nobody took up the dialogue. They're very keen.
Okay.
Maybe you should engage them.
I also invited them because next week I asked them to visit our thing, and I asked him to try to mimic a few equipment.
Yes. We should do that. We should do that. We should do that.
Yeah.
Excellent discussion. I think this has been one of the most enlightening sessions for me, at least, that I've attended. So thank you, Dr. Sajid, Dr. Kalai Selvi, Dr. Rao, Atul and Vikas, and also from Ruchir and Prabjot and Rohan for staying back from the earlier session. Thank you everyone for the excellent discussion. And I think we have some takeaways on the consortium and also on the need for the equipment manufacturing, and we'll get back. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon, and please do continue. We have some more sessions on Connect Karo throughout this week on electric buses, on EVs, and there are master classes also. So please visit our website, connectkaro.org. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.